Hey everyone, Tactics here, and in this video I'm going to go quickly through everything you need to know about Dragonflight Season 1, including discussing changes to the loot reward system from both the Rating and Mythic Plus, how to acquire your tier gear, the new seasonal affix, profession crafted gear, and much more. So let's not waste any time and get right into it by talking about Rating. So, once the expansion launches on November 28th, you'll have 2 weeks before the season actually begins on December 13th for North America or the 14th for Europe. This season release is actually quite different from other recent seasons, as all 3 of normal, heroic, and mythic difficulty of the brand new 8-boss raid Vault of the Incarnates will be available right away on day 1 of the season. No buffer week here where you just have normal and heroic before mythic releases, all of them releasing on the same day. Cross-faction rating will also be available right from the start, so no need to worry about that. During this first week as well, do not forget to check out the Race to World First happening over on Twitch. It's super interesting to watch in my opinion. I'm always a fan of it. It's a lot of fun. In terms of what this raid comes with, you have the usual title from defeating the last boss on Mythic difficulty, in this case the Storm Eater, as well as the Hero Achievement mount, which for this raid is the Raging Mag Mammoth, which is a pretty cool looking one in my opinion. One major change coming in this raid is a slight revamp to your loot rewards. First, group loot is back and is the only loot type available when inside the raid. Personal loot still exists for Mythic Plus, but if you're raiding, you'll be on group loot, along with its revamped need or greed system that is much smarter than it was in the past. Takes into account things like people rolling for main spec versus off spec, as well as not letting people roll on items that they already have or they can't use. In terms of the loot itself, there are now 3 eye level tiers within each difficulty, up from 2 tiers that we saw in Shadowlands for the all the bosses in the raid and then the 2 end bosses. So now, using Mythic Raid as an example, the first 4 bosses of the raid drop 415 eye level. The 2 wing end bosses have a 6 eye level boost on that to 421 eye level, and the final 2 bosses of the raid drop 3 additional eye level on top of that, so 424 eye level, with the goal here to be rewarding you with a better gear when you defeat harder bosses. That's not all though, as there's also a bit of an experiment going on in this raid with unique items. These are extra powerful items that have a decreased drop chance from a few bosses. Think of items like a Gavel of the First Arbiter or Edge of Night from Shadowlands, and in addition to having cool effects on them, they also have their eye level boosted by +6 from whatever that boss gives. So as an example, Aranog is the first boss of the raid, and he does have one of these unique items, the Seal of Diurna's Chosen. While Mythic Aranog would usually drop 415 eye level loot, if he drops one of these very rare rings, it will always be at 421 eye level. The other unique items in the raid are the Whispering Incarnate Icon from Primal Council, the Seal of Filial Duty from Broodkeeper Diurna, and Naltharic's Enemy of the Sky from Raszageth. Overall, I think it's a cool concept, and I'm interested to see how it plays out in the raid. Tier sets are also making a return in Dragonflight's first raid, providing both unique transmog sets and empowering effects based on your spec. One note is that these tier sets are purposefully designed to be a bit more simple and only impact kind of base abilities of your spec, because Blizzard didn't want you to have to make decisions in the brand new talent tree based on what your tier does. They want you to have that creativity because this is the first time you're getting to play around with these talent trees, and for the most part this is definitely the case. For those of you not rating, or if you're just unlucky with rating, you'll be happy to hear that the Creation Catalyst is making a return, though under a slightly different name now called the Inspiration Catalyst. Currently, this is scheduled to be available 6 weeks after the season begins, so the week of January 24th, and with some slight changes. So first off, you don't need any additional currency to use the charges, you just need to earn the charges themselves. And while we don't know exactly what you need to do to get these charges yet, it's looking like you'll be able to work towards getting them just by doing normal activities like raiding, Mythic Plus, or PvP. The earning of these charges is also account-wide now, so anything you earn on one character will be available to use on any of your other characters as well, with a cap of 6 charges per character at any one time. Next, let's talk about Mythic Plus, which just like Raids is also being fully released on day 1 with no eye level caps at all. One interesting thing about the season is the dungeon pool. For the first 2 weeks, you'll have your 8 new Dragonflight dungeons like normal you're running on Mythic 0, but when the season actually releases, only 4 of those dungeons are going to be added to the Mythic Plus pool for Season 1. Those are Ruby Life Pools, Algathar Academy, the Azure Vault, and Nokud Offensive. Alongside those 4 Dragonflight dungeons will be 4 revamped older dungeons thrown in the pool, which for Season 1 are going to be Legions, Halls of Valor, and Court of Stars, Warlords of Draenor's Shadowmoon Burial Grounds, and Mist of Pandaria's Temple of the Jade Serpent, for a total of 8 dungeons in the Season 1 pool. The 4 Dragonflight dungeons not included in the Season 1 pool will be put in the Season 2 pool, alongside some other currently unannounced older dungeons, meaning each season will be made up of completely different dungeons than the previous one, with the goal here being to keep gameplay fresh from season to season, as opposed to just running through the same dungeons for years at a time during an expansion. I should note that these older dungeons have actually been pretty heavily revamped. Even the Legion dungeons that were part of Legion Mythic Plus, there's changes to many trash mobs, boss abilities, just dungeon mechanics in general, even a full rework to a couple of the bosses to be made a little bit more modern. And after playing through these dungeons a lot on beta, I think it's all very well done actually. On that note, time for a shameless plug though. If you're looking for Mythic Plus dungeon and route guides, whether you're pugging weekly keys or trying to push with a pre-made group, you should definitely check out my channel where I'm posting walkthroughs of every dungeon from a tank's perspective, talking through different routes, things like important kicks and stops. If any of that sounds like something you'd be interested in, be sure you hit that subscribe button and head over to my channel to check it out. Continuing on though, these 8 Mythic Plus dungeons are joined by, of course, a new seasonal affix, this time Thundering. What this affix does is it gives 5% HP to all enemies in the dungeon and occasionally shoots out lightning you need to dodge, but in exchange for this downside, all 5 players will get a 30% damage and healing buff when these lightning shots come out, and you're marked with either wind or lightning for 15 seconds. If you do not clear this buff in that time, you will be stunned for 5 seconds and you'll take a nasty dot. So in order to prevent this and actually clear this debuff off, you need to stand on someone with the opposite mark. So if you're marked with wind, you go stand on someone who's marked with lightning and this buff will clear. This means if you're trying to min-max the damage buff provided by this affix, you want to clear later on in the duration, but it is not without risks, right? You can sometimes maybe have a mechanic happen later on in this dot, and then you're punished for not trying to clear early on. So it's a risk-reward system there. A couple notes on the affix itself. First, if there's ever a point where no one nearby is eligible to clear with you and your buff expires, you're not impacted by this negative effect. So if 4 players clear, obviously there's 1 person left because all 5 party members are marked. They'll just be fine. They'll get the full duration of the damage and healing buff, no negative effect. Similarly, say this goes out, and right after it goes out, 2 players die and they have to release and run back. 2 players then can clear, and the last person left alive in the area still has the debuff, but they are just fine. They aren't stunned, they aren't damaged. Nothing bad happens there. In addition, there is actually no negative effect at all for touching someone that has the same mark as you, unlike the Anduin debuff, right? A lot of the people were comparing this to the Anduin debuff early on in beta. There's no negative effect at all for touching. It's like if you're Mark of Wind touching another Mark of Wind player, Mark of Lightning touching another Mark of Lightning, so don't worry about that. This means, though, if you don't want to interact with this affix at all, when the lightning swirlies are coming out, you can just have your group stack up and instantly clear these marks so that you don't need to worry about this debuff. That brings us to one of the biggest changes for Mythic Plus this season, and that's changes to the loot reward structure. End of dungeon, valor upgrades, and Great Vault rewards now scale all the way up to plus 20 keystones instead of just plus 15. Wowhead has a pretty handy chart that shows how this compares now to the new raid loot system as well, but the TLDR is that Mythic Plusers will now have access and a path to obtain loot on par, and in some cases better than Mythic raid bosses, with the highest eye level loot available from the Great Vault for Mythic Plusers being 421, equivalent to wing and bosses in the raid, and only 3 eye levels behind the final 2 raid bosses instead of the 7 that it was in Shadowlands. Speaking of the Great Vault, it is of course making a return, as I just mentioned, and personally very happy that it is. It functions pretty much the exact same as it did in Shadowlands, so the raid requirements did decrease a bit to account for the fact there are only 8 raid bosses in the new Vault of the Incarnates raid, so it's 2, 4, 6 raid boss completions, 1, 4, 8 Mythic Plus dungeons, and 1250, 2500, or 5000 honor to fill out each box spot. And of course, if you don't want any of the items in your weekly box, you are able to get a secondary currency that you can use to buy things like sockets for your gear. One note that hasn't been implemented or announced yet, but may make an appearance as it was mentioned in one of the recent dev interviews, is currently Blizzard is thinking about adding some sort of catch-up to the vault for things like alts or players joining the patch late, which could include things like letting you pick more than one loot option and reduced requirements for filling out each slot, so it'll be interesting to see what actually gets implemented there. Moving back to Mythic Plus, to compensate for having these increased gear rewards, Mythic Plus scaling has also been increased to make this more of a challenge than it was in Shadowlands, up from 8% damage and health scaling per key level to 10% when you start going above a plus 10 key level. This definitely seems like an overall win for the Mythic Plus community, as while the dungeons may be slightly harder than they were in Shadowlands, you are also rewarded significantly better for your efforts. As I mentioned as well, Valor is returning as an upgrade currency, which also lets you upgrade gear all the way up to Mythic eye level itself for 15, though this is capped in Season 1, just like it was for all the Shadowlands seasons besides Season 4, so you won't be able to just fill out your gear by spamming +2s. A new Mythic Plus season also means new cosmetic rewards, and in this case you'll be able to pick up the Thundering title from Keystone Conqueror, the Lava Snail Mount Shellac from Keystone Master, dungeon portals from doing each dungeon on a +20, as well as a new title for reaching the top 0.1% of the Mythic Plus ladder. Still holding out hope that they add an Elite Transmog recolor to Mythic Plus, but maybe that pops up in Season 2. The last thing I wanted to mention was crafting. Of course, professions are getting a pretty significant rework in Dragonflight, which includes the addition of some pretty powerful crafted gear. A big thing with the new system is that you're able to bring your own bind-on pickup materials to crafters, and they can create gear for you. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how to earn some of these materials that you'll need. First off, Sparks of Ingenuity are used in pretty much all high eye-level crafted gear. Right off the bat, these are time-gated to prevent you from filling out your character immediately with crafted gear. You'll earn 1 through completing the main story, 1 when the season starts, then 1 every 2 weeks for the next 6 weeks. Once you've earned your first 5, a new item, Bottled Essence, will be able to drop from any form of activity in the game, sort of like Legion Legendaries, and this just gives you an additional spark so you can kind of get more as the season goes on. Outside of these sparks, you'll also need upgrade materials, which you can earn throughout the season from Raid, Mythic Plus, and PvP. Primal Chaos are used across the board and drop from pretty much anywhere, no matter the difficulty. Primal Focus drop from heroic raid bosses and Mythic Plus keys between 10 and 15, and these let you upgrade your gear all the way up to 405 eye level, just above the eye level of the first 4 bosses in heroic. Concentrated Primal Focus drops from Mythic raid bosses and Mythic Plus keys 16 and up, and these will let you go all the way up to the eye level cap on crafted gear at 418 eye level, which again is just above the eye level of the first 4 bosses on Mythic, which is at 415 eye level. So this is actually pretty respectable and potentially gear that you will use for quite some time, especially because there are also other bonus effects that you can get on top of this. Just a quick note on crafted gear though, it's not able to be put in the Inspiration Catalyst and turned into set gear, so just be aware of that, don't make that mistake. But that is it guys, everything you need to know about Dragonflight Season 1 PvE. Let me know down in the comments below how you guys feel about all these changes. Are you for the loot changes? How do you feel about the difficulty changes? Would love to hear all of your thoughts. If this video did help you out, make sure you hit that subscribe button and help me out as well. I'll be putting out tons of guide and walkthrough content related to both Mythic Plus keys and raids, as well as tank specific content, so be sure you guys do check all that stuff out if it interests you. If you have any questions about anything at all, drop that down in the comments below as well, or come stop by my Twitch channel @Tactics. I do a ton of streaming over there when the expansion launches, of course. I do things like Mythic raiding, like high Mythic Plus keys. Come drop by, say hi, ask any questions you've got. I'll do my best to answer. Otherwise, thank you all so much for watching. Enjoy Dragonflight launch, and I'll see you in the next video.